people ask me, do I regret going public? And, I would have done stuff differently.
If I get you right, we buy a bunch of PBNs, right? And then we split them into more PBNs.
Yeah, do a merger, exactly.
We are live in this second episode of In the Query today with no other than Dominic Wells. Dom, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I was very excited for this episode, just to give a bit of background to those that are new to Dom. Dom was the founder of Human Proof Designs a long time ago, over a decade, is that right?
Yeah, I think in August it will be about a decade.
Yeah. And from there, we went into much larger ventures and now runs Onfolio, publicly traded company in the Nasdaq index. So definitely a exciting journey. I think, Dom, you've spoken about the journey of going from English teacher to a digital nomad and building agencies a few times. So don't know if you want to skip it or
Yeah,
just talk
well,
about like how.
anyone who wants to hear that story can find me any one of the other podcasts I've done. I think I've told the same story so many times. And anyone who's heard my story before, we can save them the hassle.
Today, I'm mostly interested in a few things, right? Because I think there's plenty of business podcasts out there that will go very deep into all the details of the industry and this and that and what's the hottest tip. And sure, we'll have a section about that, so people that that are interested in the M&A space or they're building their own roll-up companies can also get to learn from somebody that has gone really as far as you can go, being a company public and through all the challenges that entails. So definitely very curious to learn how some of those processes are done and felt and lived from the human point of view, right? Of the person that has all the responsibility on their shoulders, that is going somewhere that was the first time bringing a company public, right? I don't think most people never do that step. Some people do it, as serial entrepreneurs that bring companies public, and maybe that will be you in another 10 years, and we'll do a different session of this podcast.
What's been interesting is not having as many people to talk to about it as maybe I would like. So when you're running a private company, you still have to figure stuff out by yourself. You have to think about how to manage a team and so many things that when you're running your first business, you don't really know what you're doing. But you also have the benefit of being able to go to conferences and networking events, and you build friendships with other people, and you can at least riff on some topics with them. Whereas running a public company, you can do that with the business side, like the part that actually that you're doing. And with us, we're running multiple businesses, so we get to do that with multiple businesses. I'll go to an SEO conference and sort of top up my network in SEO and top up my knowledge in SEO, and we send some of our portfolio companies as well. So that's pretty cool. But there's no at least to my knowledge, I haven't been invited to any. There's no public company CEO conference. I mean, actually, there probably is, but there's stuff about corporate governance where boards go and members of management go to learn about how to be a good board member. And there's conferences where public company CEOs and management, like CFOs and so on, they go to meet investors. And there's lots of investors who maybe they've got way more experience than you have. There's investment bankers who've got way more experience than you have. And they'll give you their opinion, sometimes solicited, sometimes not. But ultimately, they're usually more like a counterparty to you because they want you to say issue more stock that they can sell to their clients so that they can make a commission. So their advice is going to be, this is what you should do, and if you're not interested in doing that, I kind of don't have any advice for you. And there's advisors, sure, like we worked with advisors to take us public, and I have shareholders who have become, I wouldn't say advisors, but insightful, and they can give me insights into what shareholders think and so on. But a lot of the time, you're figuring it out by yourself. And the stakes are pretty high because you're figuring it out in public. You're representing your company's best interests, but also shareholders and so on. So the personal side of it, kind of going back to your question, it's like the entrepreneurial journey on steroids, really. And I think the reason a lot of companies wait until later to go public is because they're kind of big and mature enough to handle a lot of the pressures. Not that we aren't, but it's definitely there's a reason I think most small public companies kind of never escape that small public company size. A lot of them are inexperienced and underdeliver, and they don't really have any. There's no real money in Wall Street to help these companies anymore because everyone just uses Robinhood and stuff like that. So it's yeah, it can be difficult to navigate.
I can imagine only really because, for anyone that's running a business, okay, you have all the clients' interests, right? And you're aiming to deliver. You have all the team. If you have all the partners, but maybe the amount of people, unless you're a very large company with tons of employees, right, that kind of depend on you to deliver for everyone's livelihood to continue forward is a reduced amount, and you have a lot of decision-making power. How does that change when you start issuing stock and then you have stakeholders, and maybe certain group of stakeholders wants one thing, the board wants one thing, you have a different vision? How do you align everyone with a certain North Star for the business?
Well, the board should want what the shareholders want because that's that's their job. That's who they work for. Yeah, the board might not necessarily know what the shareholders want or know how best to represent it. But kind of to answer your question, really, it's no different from when you're a private company. You, as the leader, should set the vision, and you should know where you want to go. You should know how you're going to get there, and you never do because that's business. You never know how you're going to get there, but you have an idea, and then you execute it, and then you pivot if you have to, or maybe you don't pivot, but you just adjust along the way. And so none of that really changes because that's just a business fundamental. But I think there's just added layers of intricacy because when you're a public company, you have more levers. Really, you can issue stock or you can buy a business with stock instead of just debt or cash. You can communicate things. You can get more visibility. All these great benefits, but you have to weigh up, well, what is the best way of doing it? So, for example, we could go out tomorrow and buy a business and pay all stock for it. Is that good for shareholders because we haven't used any cash? Or is it bad for shareholders because it's a dilutive event? So, hey everyone, we didn't use any cash, great, but now instead of 12 million shares, there's 15 million shares. And you have to kind of weigh it up because in theory, if the stock price goes up, as a result of the transaction because maybe you bought a business, you got a great deal, your revenue is going to go up, your profit's going to go up. So the fact that there's now 15 million shares instead of 12 million shares doesn't matter. If I have 1,000 shares worth $1 and later I have 1,000 shares worth $1.50, I'm not going to care whether I have 1% of the company or 0.75% of the company. But where it gets challenging is your intentions signal a lot of things. So, first of all, you could issue stock and you have no idea what's going to happen to the stock price afterwards. So, you think, well, what do shareholders want? And generally speaking, shareholders don't want you to issue stock. And I I am of that same persuasion. I think stock is the most expensive form of capital, especially where our stock is trading right now. So you do all these maths, right? You kind of think, okay, well, like in our case, this is just very hypothetical, but um, we're at like a $2.5 million market cap, which is very small, and we increase our profits. At some point, we could go to say $5 a share, which would be about a $25 million market cap. So still very small for a public company. But if we get to $5 or $6, there are warrants outstanding that people can, which are kind of like stock options that people can exercise. They have to pay $5 to exercise it, but if they're buying a stock which is trading for $6 for $5, people will do that. But that $5 comes to us, so that brings in there's 6 million warrants at $5, so that's $30 million. So if they're all exercised at once, which they won't be, that would bring in around $27 million after the brokers get their commissions and stuff like that. And so $27 million for Onfolio, we can acquire $20 million worth of profit. And at that point, the stock price might go to 15. And so when I'm sitting here with a stock which is trading for less than $1, and I'm like, should I issue more shares to make acquisitions and benefit the company? It's a really tough decision because you're like, yeah, this share's worth so much more in just such a short period of time, or it could be that I don't want to do that. But then, you've got some shareholders who are like, why don't you issue more equity? And then you have other shareholders who are like, never issue any equity. And then you've got others who are like, well, you could do it if it's going to be a value add. And you're there being like, private companies don't have this problem, but private companies also don't have this opportunity. So it's, the general idea is if you think your stock is slightly overvalued, you issue stock. If you think it's dramatically undervalued, you don't issue stock. And we've kind of gone off on a tangent here that's not really maybe relevant to the point of this podcast, but this is just one example of the things that you have to weigh up and learn and filter all the different opinions and noise and signals and so on. So it's just a constant learning. Like, we've been a public company for about 18 months, I think, August 2022. So maybe 20 months. And yeah, the things we've learned are incredible. And I think the reason some people end up having multiple public companies, like you talked about, is because they're like, hey, let me try that again later. They learn so much, and they learn. It's like people start multiple businesses, or or even people who have multiple children. The second kid is less messed up than the first kid because they got a bit better at it as they went along. So
I mean, it's very interesting because it ties directly with what was going to be my next question, which is that grass really so much greener on going public versus staying private?
I think it's hard to really know because I can't split test it. Like, if we'd stayed private, would we be where we are now? Would we be further along? Would we have done something else? It's hard to tell. But what I see is we get a lot of opportunities come our way now in terms of acquisition, in terms of people who we want to work with. And then when we're weighing up those acquisitions, we've got more levers we can pull in terms of we can offer not just stock, because like I've already talked about not wanting to issue stock, but we can issue preferred stock, which is a different class of share. We can, like, I'm some dude living in Taiwan. Not many people are going to give me a 70% seller note. But as a public company, we've done that. We've got more businesses in the pipeline of similar terms. So right now, it's difficult to look back at where we sort of are and say, yeah, this is a no-brainer, everybody should do it. People ask me, do I regret going public? And I think it's a difficult question to answer. Like, I don't regret it, but I think, I would have done stuff differently. But when I think about the path we're on or where we're going to be in 10 years or even 5 years or maybe 1 year, we'll be able to like draw a straight line from where we are in the future to the decision to going public. So basically, what will make it work is the fact that we're public. It's just going to take a bit longer than we thought, but the plan hasn't really changed. So do I think everyone should do it? No. When it works, yeah, it really works.
You mentioned that if you don't regret it, yet you will do things differently, which in a way I think is completely understandable, and it's just a mark for someone that has learned and is being able to have some self-reflection and think, yeah, okay, here, definitely things that we could have made better, but you only know that because you passed that. So it's very hard to rewrite the past. Now, because you've built and grown a multi-six-figure marketing agency that you sold, right? And then now you've also built, grown, and collectively operate a multi-million-dollar portfolio of multi-million-dollar companies, most of them agencies, right? Then the question that I have for you is, across these, well, technically 12 years of experience, right? Everything that you've learned. If there was somebody watching this video right now that maybe is an in-house SEO or a copywriter or a web designer, any of the very many trades within digital marketing, or even outside of digital marketing, but they have, a good background that could translate into the kind of businesses that we talk about and that we work with, and they wanted to start maybe an agency or, something beyond freelancing, right? To really build a business. If that was you, your day one, but you know everything that you know today, you don't have the network, right? Because again, it's day one. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that you accrue over the years is the network, and it's the possibility to do things with others. But you know everything that you know right now. What would you do?
I probably
Okay.
would start an agency because it's what I know. I think I would pick something that I think will be a compelling agency for the short term, but ideally the long term as well. So you got to do the short term stuff because you need to get money in the door. You need to start building that business, but ideally it's something long term so that you don't just make a bit of money and then after a year you have to move on to the next thing or whatever. I would pick a niche or a particular service. Now, right now, what comes to my mind would be something around AI fulfillment or like implementation. Obviously, AI is a very hot topic right now, and there's a lot of people kind of jumping on this service. Like, I'm gonna teach businesses how to use AI, but I actually don't think there has actually been much adoption of AI yet. Like, ChatGPT came out November, December 2022, I think. There was a lot of talk about, AI is going to change everything, LLMs are going to change everything, and they have, like, definitely they have. But in terms of productivity, I think it's all still being built. There's a lot of infrastructure. Right now you got a lot of tools that can do individual purposes. So you have Jasper AI, which I don't even know if they're still around, but you want to create content, there's tools that do that. You want to create images, there's tools that do that. You want to have chatbots, there's tools that do that. There's loads of tools, but there's nothing that for example, an agency like Get Me Links probably uses AI in some areas, but there isn't in terms of things like, oh wow, this is going to 10x our productivity, or we're going to be able to add like this whole tertiary layer of AI to our business processes. 18 months later, adoption is actually pretty thin. So there's still a need. And I would probably maybe even pick a niche. Like, I help SEO businesses implement AI properly, or I help online businesses implement AI properly. Something where I would be like, hey, I'd pay this person to just come into one of my portfolio companies, do an audit, and then tell me all the ways we can use AI. And maybe it's a combination of off the shelf tools like, okay, get this account, get that account, get this account, use Zapier here. And then also maybe you need to build some custom AI to connect, things together. So that would be one idea. Another idea could be something totally different, like digital PR is quite hot right now. Maybe you start a digital PR agency. So I kind of went a bit too much into the idea for the agency rather than what I would do. But once I have this idea, as you mentioned, you've got to really build a network. And when you first start and you hear people say you got a network, you're kind of like, well, what does that mean? What does that even look like? And the answer is nobody knows. But you got to start showing up. Like, go to conferences. Don't just go to conferences to sell your services. Go there to learn and to get feedback and spot other opportunities and maybe sell your services. But like Matt Diggity just did a video saying, what the world's best SEOs do that other people don't do, and one of them was networking. We recently sort of encouraged the CEO of Outreach Mama to go to the Saigon SEO conference. I think it's happening right now, actually. And people said to him, "What took you so long? Why didn't you guys show up to a conference before? We worked with you guys years ago." And so it's been a really good opportunity for them. And so I would just pick a niche, or even just like a sub niche, or just a service, like do one thing, and then start building a network and start trying to find people interested in hiring you. Now, does that mean DMing people on LinkedIn or Twitter? Does it mean like cold email outreach? Does it mean cold calling? This is unfortunately going to be something that you have to figure out for yourself based on your skill set and what works. But it's going to be one of those things. It's like it's one of these 10 things. Go figure it out, and here's how you figure it out. And I was talking about, does it have to be short? Should it be short term or long term? And ideally both. But there's a lot of people out there who are successful, and maybe they started out with an agency or a service they did for 1 or 2 years, but they use that to build a network or get business confidence or get a little bit of cash in the door. And then a couple of years later, they spotted another opportunity and moved on to do something wonderful. So it's not like, yeah, you have to pick something that you're going to be able to do for 10 years. And so, yeah, that's what I would do. Just get busy doing that. That's probably how I would tell someone to start today. And that's kind of interesting because maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would have told somebody to start a blog or a niche site. And I don't
Mm.
think that that's necessarily the best way to do it now.
Yeah, I like the way you put it with there's nothing that's intrinsically wrong with business that perhaps have a short shelf life because they put your flywheel spinning. There's a video from Alex Becker from a long time ago that I saw that I really liked. So fundamentally, it's like you get something spinning, and eventually on one of those spins, it might offshoot you into something else. Then you get that thing spinning, and you never know when one of those things is going to be the big jackpot. For as long as you keep
Yeah.
things spinning, right?
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about you, for example. You, if I remember correctly, um, you were at Human Proof Designs and you asked permission to do this, and it was all good. But you saw an opportunity, I think, within, say, the Media Vine Facebook group, maybe other Facebook groups as well. But you were quite good at doing like speed optimizations for people's websites. Doing like most of them were in WordPress, so doing a plugin review, looking for get rid of this plugin or replace that plugin with this one because it's faster. This one's been hacked recently, don't use that. And optimizing people's websites. And then you saw within a certain group that you could offer this as a service, and it wasn't something Onfolio was offering. um, it didn't fit with what we were doing. We didn't want to do it, so you were like, hey, can I start doing this? And I was like, sure. And then I think it was just this one thing that you were offering, just like, I'll help people audit their website and make it faster. And I may have misremembered, but this is what I think it
No,
was. And
that's
so
quite
you
literally
were
that.
showing up, yeah, and you were showing up in a Facebook group. People were like, yeah, cool, I'm going to use you. You're very helpful. And then that kind of pivots off to doing the next thing and the next thing, and now you're where you are. And my journey has been something like that as well. Like I started out just fulfilling this one service, and then that spun into something else. And yeah, I think it's a very viable way of getting started. I think you're not going to spot the opportunities unless you're living and breathing the thing. Like you're
Mhm.
living and breathing something and you notice an opportunity. It could be a gap in the market, it could be a pain point or something, and then you go off and solve it. But you're also not going to be able to necessarily execute on spotting that opportunity, take advantage of it, unless you're kind of building your business muscle and your business skills. So yeah, absolutely, just don't worry about, is this going to be a service I can do for 5 years? Just, I mean, if it is, great, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. The reason at the very beginning of the question I said, but you don't have the network is because realistically, and this took me a bit longer to learn than I wish it did. Realistically, one of the most, or perhaps the most valuable thing that you do get that is harder to quantify when you are running your first businesses that are like, listen, speed optimization WordPress agency, like it's a cool lifestyle business if you're single and in your 20s and living in Asia. right? But it's not a large scale business unless you become the one speed optimization agency for literally everything in the world, and you're amazing. But for that, you already need a certain business acumen to build that instead of like what I did, right? But then that got me into connecting with a lot of people. Then we started doing audits, and then as doing audits for those people, then I started putting that somewhere else, right? And ultimately that afforded the travel to conferences and meeting people. And in one of those conferences, I met somebody, I connected you to, and then many years later, right, there was this, oh, we just bought this business. Do you want to be part of it? And that's how I went back into the Onfolio family of things with Get Me Links. And it was through network. It was through doing something that had substance for another person. And I wasn't selling Onfolio, or I wasn't selling myself or anything. It's like, oh, I think you two should talk. And I just connected people,
Yeah.
and then that connection connected me back many years later, and it was amazing. And it's been an amazing 2 years running Get Me Links. And it's through the network. And I know, like, whatever happens in the next 5-10 years, for as long as we stay within the network and we continues to add value to a lot of different people, doors will continuously open.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a blog post at Human Proof Designs once about something like it was a little bit clickbaity, but it was like how failure to network sooner cost me $120,000 or something. And it was basically when I started Human Proof Designs, people would say, you should do guest posting, you should connect with other people, you should network. And I'm like, no, I'm kind of shy. I built an online business so I wouldn't have to like connect with people. And, can't I just sit behind my computer and write and like, how do I guest post? Like I have to message people and hope they reply. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. And so I kind of didn't network for like 18 months. I was just spinning my wheel. I made a little bit of money. Like I made 500K this month. Sorry, $500 this month, and um, 1K this month, and stuff like that. And then I kind of finally started networking, and I sucked. I absolutely sucked. But after 3 or 4 months, I got a bit better. And after say 6 months, I was making 10 grand a month, or even a little bit more, like maybe 12, 13, 14. And I was like, man, this has all come from networking because I'm getting referrals, I'm getting people are hearing about my service because I'm doing guest posts on other people's website, or like Empire Flippers mentioned me on their podcast, and that got me a few sales. And I was like, man, if I'd done this right from the beginning, I'd be making 10K like a year ago. So therefore, like it cost me $100,000 not doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hormozy
so
has
yeah,
this
I mean,
quote
yeah.
he calls the ignorance tax, which is the price that you pay for not knowing something that would make you X amount more. If you knew that today, then you would already make that money, but because you're ignorant that you don't know it, and it applies to everyone, right? And I think I say this pretty much in every video, but I don't know a single person that doesn't have blind spots. We all do, right? In business, in life, in relationships, like it's the nature of the human condition, right? We only know what we know, and we're not omniscient. Only the guy upstairs is omniscient, right? So we do pay a price for that, and we pay a price on every dimension, and business is not different from any other.
So basically, just start is it's like
Get
such a
it
lame
moving.
answer, when people are like, "How do I get started?" or "How should I build a business?" and you say, "Just start." It's like a little bit. It just sounds like something that you would see on Instagram.
So the problem with platitudes is that, sometimes they can feel like death by a thousand cuts. When you go to Instagram and you see these little like overused quotes. The problem is that those quotes come from somewhere of great wisdom. Like, how do I start learning a language? You go and you learn one word, and then you learn a second word, and then you use both, and then you keep going until eventually they stick in your head, right? How do I start in business? Get it moving. Start choosing an industry, an angle, a persona, a service. Put a shitty offer together. Build a crappy landing page that has disgusting colors in it, and run an ad and all this different. And that, congratulations, you're in business. You're not making money. You're still banging your head against the wall, but that is business. That's how you learn. Right? That teaches you more than hours and hours and hours of podcasts. So a bit of the idea for a podcast is more like so you get some of the knowledge that will make your banging your face against the wall a shorter period or maybe you bang it against a more profitable wall than, if you try to start right now with niche websites and you want to make a living out of that and you never build a site, you don't know SEO, like that's a tough one. Can you steal money with niche websites on SEO? Of course you can, right? If you've been doing it for 8 years. If you want to start from zero right now, it's a tough one. I'll take a detour with a section that I call Nobody Expects the Spanish Inquisition. When I do
Okay.
enough of these episodes, people will expect the Spanish Inquisition, but you never know when to expect it.
Okay.
So, what is your biggest, most embarrassing business fuck up?
Oh, just have to pick one. I always think, I don't know if these are the biggest ones, but I always think of like times where I've been preparing a big launch for a new product or a service, or maybe it's like a discount or something, and I get the landing pages ready. I write all the emails, and then like I hit send, and the email goes out to 5,000 people, or sometimes 100,000 people, and like within the first minute, I get a reply like, "Hey, the link's broken." Um, and you're like, "Oh my god, now I've got to email everybody again." Great for engagement though. Good for your email deliverability. So that's I never know whether that's like the biggest, but it's like that's always the one that comes to mind. I've been asked this question maybe 2 or 3 times, and it's always that one. It was like a human proof designs. It's like a big launch that I did, and then yeah, the all the links were broken. That was super frustrating because you test everything, you test it again and again, and then you hit send, and something's broken, and you're like, "Why did that break? I tested it 5 times." So yeah, I'm gonna go with that one.
And even though it's been a long time, if it's from the human proof design years, how do you take as a person, right? Not necessarily talking as a business and, number calculations, but as a human being that bleeds and poops and has feelings, when you make one of these mistakes and something really goes off in the business, how do you take the punch and go through the valley of the shadows and come up at the other side being wiser and ready to continue? What's your process?
Just kind of manage it. I don't think you realize that you're going through that process at the time. Like, let's say something bad happens, you get scammed. So one of our businesses got scammed for $20,000, I think, early 2021, and I didn't list that as the biggest embarrassing thing because it wasn't me that did it. I was just a party to it. But when it happened, you don't really sit there and think, oh, okay, this is one of those things where I'm just going through the valley of despair and I'm going to come out the other side, and oh, this is only a mistake if I don't learn from it. At the time you just think, wow, this sucks, and you feel your stomach feels sick, and maybe you lose a bit of weight if it lasts for a couple of weeks because you feel so stressed and everything. So at the time you don't think, okay, let's be rational, let's be stoic, let's just deal with this and get through it. Maybe once it's happened a few times, you start recognizing, oh, this is one of those things that I just got to get through and it'll be fine. So I think the answer is it takes experience, and you just say, all right, I've solved problems like this before, and it felt pretty crappy then too. So I don't know what the solution is, but I just have faith that I'll get through it. It's very much like going through like a breakup, or if you're mourning like the loss of a relative or a loved one or something. You know, people will say to you, "Don't worry, it gets easier with time." Um, or even people don't say that to you, but you kind of have an internal voice that says it to you because you've heard it said on TV and stuff so many times, and you kind of believe it. But you're like, that doesn't really help me right now. Like, time is not like time just comes, and it comes very slowly in situations like this. So
Mhm.
you kind of know, yeah, I'm going to get through it and things are going to get better, but it still sucks. It's like being bitten by a mosquito. You're like, yeah, I'll probably feel fine tomorrow, but right now this is not fun.
Pretty
And
freaking
so
easy. Yeah.
you just have to know, well, yeah, eventually it's going to stop itching or it's going to stop hurting. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, is there anything I can do to speed it up? Like, sometimes you're helpless. You just have to ride something out, and sometimes you're like, actually, yeah, there's like these 7 things I can do, and maybe I don't know the outcome of them, but let's start going through them. and then you just feel that it gets more manageable. So yeah, I think just experience basically is the answer.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you touch on the subject of losing a loved one, right? Mourning. I This is perhaps a bit too personal, but I've had very little exposure with death in my life. I got lucky enough that none of my friends died. My parents still alive, but last year I lost one of the most important people in my life, and it was a process that I had no clue because I've never like my grandma died, but my grandma was almost 100 years old, and it was no surprise, right? Other than that, there was nothing. And I remember talking with a therapist, and he said a sentence so simple that again could be used as one of those platitudes and be misused, but it was so wise. Said, "You celebrate the life, and you mourn the death." And on celebrating the life of that person, I found a lot of joy and a lot of reasons to be grateful for what was throughout entire adult life. And then like there's no circumventing, like he's dead, so I have to accept that, right? And accept that I'm gonna feel certain things. And I've found that very principle also useful whenever like business times get tough. Like, okay, this sucks, and it's fine, it does suck. I'm not gonna tell myself, oh, this is great, he's such a great talent of the team now is not with us anymore, right? I don't need to lie to myself like, yeah, that's it, okay, now while it's shit and I'm feeling that it's shit, what do I do? Right? Okay, now. So similar to what you said, right? And with experience, I guess the intensity of those emotions or how much they take you for a ride becomes less because you're, oh, I've been here before. Yep, I've already felt this before. Just like becomes a bit of like another Tuesday, which does make me wonder, for certain things that are part of a business deal falling through or, getting scammed and stuff. I've also got scammed in the past with visas and whatnot. One of the things of being a digital nomad, which, we didn't chat much in this episode, but, and yeah, it does feel shit. Being scammed, like, it really puts you like, shit, I thought I was smart. How did this happen? You know? And yeah, I guess it's very similar to what you said. You develop the thick skin through experience. Question that I always have to myself is like, is there certain things in life that I don't want to develop a thick skin in terms of like numbing myself for them because they're just part of life itself, right? So I still want to feel like if somebody that I love goes, I still want to feel everything, even though it's gonna suck, right? Because probably reminds me that I'm still alive and I'm not just an automaton that said, "Yep, somebody else dead, don't care." I don't think that's how I want to live it. But for business, it would be nice. Like, yep, bad month, no problem. Let's push.
Well, I think for businesses it's important to not get numb to it either. Otherwise, because sometimes riding these things out is a very passive thing. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to get on with it and ride it out. But a lot of the time, it maybe spurs you into action. Like, let's say your business is running out of money, or you haven't had enough sales recently, and maybe you need to let go of some people, or you need to double down your efforts and do more marketing. Um, if you didn't have that period of it sucking, maybe you wouldn't do anything about it. Like, I've often thought about incentives with with our portfolio CEOs. We pay them salaries, and like of course, you have to pay people salaries. But when you own the business, you take a salary as well. But if the business is performing badly, you lose sleep over it, and you maybe lose weight over it, and eventually drag the business back into a good period. And if people don't have that kind of ownership or agency over their business, maybe they won't feel that pain because they're going to get a salary regardless. So are they going to spur themselves into action as much? And so, I think Yeah, I don't think you ever want to get like desensitized to that feeling. Hopefully, you can get better at business so the feeling and the situations that cause that feeling doesn't come around as often. But I think it's a good guttural reaction to have.
Another question that I have on this section is, what's an ethical dilemma that you face in business often now, given your position?
Well, with me, it's fairly easy because I can either do stuff that sends me to jail or I do stuff that doesn't send me to jail. So you kind of don't have those dilemmas. It's very black and white with public companies. That doesn't mean every public company doesn't do those things. You know, we've seen throughout history that that's not the case. But
Yep.
it's a lot simpler. Like with private companies, let's take an SEO agency for example. There's obviously SEO agencies that are kind of bullshit and they lie to their customers and so on. I don't really think that's an ethical dilemma. I think they're just bad people. But what if there's a customer who says he wants a certain type of backlink? Like let's say he wants a DR80 backlink. And you're thinking, well, actually, DR doesn't matter as much. What you need is a relevant backlink from a good site that has a clean history and it's a good quality piece of content which has passed editorial review. And, they're like, no, 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 I just want a DA80. And you're like, well, there's this site here which is kind of scammy and it doesn't really work, but it's a DR80. Like, here you go, have the link, I'll take your money, and they're happy because you gave them what they want, but the reason they want that link is because they want to get results, and it's not going to give them results. So I think business often you get that kind of dilemma where something's maybe not the best thing for someone and you try to guide them to something else, but they hear what they're going to hear and they're like, well, I'm just going to go ask somebody else or buy it from somebody else. So then should you just take their money anyway because they want to give it to you, or are you like, no, I'm gonna stick to my guns and turn you down for business because you're wrong, and like if you give that money to somebody else, that's not my problem. And so it's not always that black and white. Like as I'm describing that dilemma, I think everybody listening to this is like, well, yeah, of course you should turn them away, but it's definitely a dilemma people face. And I think there's a lot of other scenarios like that are a lot more nuanced, maybe softer, more subtle. So it's not easy to know.
Yeah, I think both of
Yeah,
us will think, of course, you should turn them away, or of course, you should like invest the time into explaining to them like what's what. And there's going to be a very large contingent of people that says the customer is always right in matters of taste, which is the full sentence. And
speaking of
now,
platitudes.
speaking of platitudes, right? The problem is the tastes in the industry get pushed by SEO influencers, which if you run an SEO agency and you're large and you're putting content out there, basically makes anyone in the industry that's talking about SEO, right? And change SEO for any other industry. Okay, if you're a copywriter, if you're a web designer, if you're a CRO expert, don't matter, right? Whatever content you put out there in the world, that becomes sort of like the opinion of what works in the industry, right? So if you go and says, yeah, what's working right now, the best in the world of publicly traded companies is this, or in the world of M&A, this is the best move right now, right? Then people are going to come to you and other companies as investors and say, hey, I would like to do a deal of this nature. And I'm not going to quote anyone, but there's influencers out there in the world of business and M&A and stuff that are recommending everyone to basically buy laundromats and a couple of other businesses with no cash up front and da. And good luck finding those deals, right? And they do become the kind of the only deal that people want right now, because there's also influencers
Yeah.
to say that that's the best one.
Do you remember when we were at Human Proof Designs, and there was that case study that came out, 10 Beasts?
Sure do.
And I don't doubt the authenticity of the case study. Well, I mean, you could see how well his site was doing in Ahrefs and SEMrush and stuff. So, like, yeah, his site was crushing it. Maybe some of the link building methods, like, he said all he did was it scholarship and adding dates to his articles. Was that true? Was there some other dodgier backlink building going on? I don't know. Probably not. I think like it was probably authentic, but it still felt like this was a lightning in a bottle situation. Most people shouldn't go out there and try and build a site like 10 Beasts. They probably won't rank. They won't be able to get the results that he got. He did well, great, good for him. Sold that site for a lot of money. The owners lost their money very quickly. Not his fault, probably. But we had so many people coming to Human Proof Designs being like, oh, can you build me a site? It's called 11 Beasts. Or like, I want to build something just like 10 Beasts. Or I want to build, it was niches that we knew wouldn't work. And they were trying to build that exact thing. And we were kind of like, no, we don't think you should build a site like this. We think you should, do this or you should do that. And we were constantly turning people away. And we'd have made way more money if we just went short and, just churned out the same site for everybody. And maybe one of them would have succeeded and 9 would have failed. But, it's like people, like you say, people just read his case study and wanted to do it. And he wasn't even necessarily trying to push anything. I don't think he was selling a service or anything. He was just sharing his results. But yeah, it's like a situation where you're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And most recently with us, we had like all the FBA aggregators raising money, going out and buying FBA businesses. And I had people saying to me, why don't you just raise a bunch of money and go after FBA businesses? And I was like, I don't think it's a good business model. And it's like raising money. So right now we're raising money to go out and buy agencies. And we're not really pitching capital gains to people. So we're saying it's like a cash flow play. So, you invest 100K with us, maybe in a few years that 100K will be worth 110K or 120K. But that 100K will have paid you 25K a year every year. So after, say, 5 years, you'll have earned 125K. And you'll still have your 100K original investment that you can cash out, and maybe you can cash it out for 120. And like I could raise a lot more money if I just said, not only are you going to get great cash flow and earn like 25% a year, but we're also going to double the value or we're going to triple the value. But I don't think that it's necessarily accurate, so I'm not, that's not part of the pitch. But sometimes it's like, well, hey, tell me what you want to invest in, and that's what we're doing. Because it's like, I would raise like, you want capital gains? Yeah, we'll give you that. Because it's just like so much. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference. You're like, I know you're going to get a good result if you work with me, but you think you want this and you're wrong, but I can just say, yes, you'll get this, and then I'll give you something else, and it's going to get you the result. That happens all the time with agencies, and it's it just is what it is, I think.
Yeah, some weirdly some comparison came to mind. It's like when somebody asks for a stronger cocktail, but that will completely ruin the cocktail. And all you do is you put a drop of vodka in the straw, like, here's your stronger cocktail. And then past the first sip, like, oh my God, this cocktail is delicious. I love it. Thank you so much. Like, it's the same cocktail as before. I just adjusted so it's like what you thought you wanted.
You just, I know like in Spain and a lot of those countries just give them water, but like run vodka around the rim. So they think,
the free shots in the middle of the night, you get like the cheapest vodka. And then, those kind of tricks. But, when people have also lost the taste because it's 4 a.m. and everybody says smash, I think that's a bit...
Yeah, you're probably saving that person's life by not giving them more.
Pretty much. And they think they're having a great night.
I scammed you, but you didn't die, so,
And it was free. It was free shots. So why you complain? Okay, this section is called the query that says freshness. So for everyone in SEO, they'll get the reference. Quickly, right now, where do you think the M&A industry is headed?
I think you'll see more like funds and fund of funds and more things like what we're doing, where it's less. I think at the moment, a lot of people in the space who are buying businesses and so on are very technical. Like they want to buy a business, do it themselves, get good results. And then there's passive buyers who come in. They're looking really more for just like an investment. And they're more likely to lose their money if they invest passively. Like they shouldn't be becoming operators. And so I think seeing more funds where people can just invest in a diversified portfolio and then maybe other people. I think there's almost opportunity now for a fund of funds where there's enough funds out there. Like Web Street has a fund, we're raising one. FE International have a couple. There's a bunch of SaaS funds. Someone else could start a fund that then invests in all of those funds. So I think you'll see more of that. I think probably maybe more minority investments where you're at the moment, most minority investments are really focused on sort of like angel investing or VC investing. Like, I'll buy 10% of your business. It's not profitable yet, but I'm backing your idea and so on. But really, it's more like, oh, you're making like $1 million a year. You want to take some chips off the table. Like, yeah, I'll buy 10% of your business. And I think maybe even a combination of the two, where there are funds that go out there and do minority. In terms of the types of businesses that are acquired, I think that's going to evolve as the business space evolves. Like right now, no one's really buying content or affiliate sites. I think wait a couple of months and people will reinvent that business model. So there's a more scalable, predictable way of running those types of sites. Maybe it means paid traffic or other traffic sources. And then I think the space will heat up around them again. Yeah, that's probably my best predictions for now.
What do you think people that maybe they have a few million sitting after an exit and they're looking to either get into this game themselves to start a fund or to start, putting their chips into multiple funds or one of these fund of funds? What do you think people should be preparing for?
I think it depends on the individual. Like if somebody, I know people who've sold businesses and now they invest in other ones and they're more technical, they're more hands-on, they want to either buy a business and run it themselves or buy it and hire someone to run it and work directly with them, kind of like your situation. If it was me, I would probably be more passive and I'd invest in a few different funds. And what should I prepare for? Just things where there's a little bit more liquidity, because businesses, like a traditional fund is 5 years or 10 years, whereas what we're trying to do is have something where people can be liquid every year, because business changes, business models work and then they stop working, and you don't want to invest in long term time horizons. And some of our investments that went badly, they were going great for a year or two and then just the rug gets pulled out by a Google update or something like that. And so having a mechanism for liquidity is important, and needing to constantly evolve and iterate, I think, is important.
In the coming years, as AI continues to develop, right, and more businesses integrated, and also there's more businesses that are full-blown built on AI services, do you see that changing the status quo in your industry any soon?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I think implementation has been quite thin. So I think there will be disruption. I don't want to sleep on it, but I think it's probably going to take longer to have an impact than people expect. But when it does have an impact, it could be quite quick. Just like a lot of content agencies were just wiped out overnight. I think ultimately AI is going to be a net win, a net positive. And so it's something that should be embraced and try to see how it can benefit you rather than fear it making you obsolete. It's going to wipe out a ton of jobs, but it's probably going to create 10 times as many. So you just got to make sure you're in the latter group.
The
So
right
maybe
side.
you need to evolve your business. Maybe you need to set yourself up so that you can evolve. And otherwise, just try to keep up with what's changing.
Beautiful. And then to wrap the show, wrong answers only. One of my favorite parts. You can get to be stupid for the last 10 minutes. Wrong answers only. What's a merger?
Um, wrong answers only. Okay. What's a merger? It is when one business breaks up into two.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think is the single best type of business to buy as a roll-up company right now?
PPN sites.
Okay, you got me on that one. Good. So if I get you right, we buy a bunch of PBNs, right? And then we split them into more PBNs.
do a merger. Exactly.
Good. I got the next $1 trillion idea there. Hi, Dom. Sincerely appreciate you joining the show. It's been a longer one, but definitely enjoyed it. Did learn a bunch of things I'm gonna write for myself here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good.